Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. Every moment in your life is filled with all the opportunities that life has to offer. My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman. You see, life is a canvas, and you decide to color. What colors will you choose for your life today? Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and I want to thank you for joining us through tonight's show. Tonight we will talk about one of our most important things, and that's money. So we've entitled the show Money Matters. I believe that your life is a canvas and is filled with lots of colors. One of those colors is the color of money. I want to help you tonight fill that portion of your canvas with wonderful, great ideas about money, with ideas about what to do, what not to do, and when the best time is to do that. Helping me with that tonight is Eric O. January, CPA, a financial advisor for the Empowerment Doctor magazine, which is a free online magazine, and the author of Most Sense Book 3, Managing Risk. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. And thank you all for listening.
We're going to just dive right in and talk about some of my favorite things. And you have some very interesting issues that you discuss in the book, so we want to talk about some of that. A lot of times people are afraid to handle their money because they don't know how to determine which risks are right for them.
That's right.
How would you suggest that they begin to look at that?
Sure. Well, first, the topic of the third book is dealing with how do you manage risk.
Okay.
And most people that are not investing, often one of the reasons they give is that they're afraid of risk. They're afraid to lose money. And so I actually go through the book and actually explain how do you value the different types of risk and then what risk actually is. I define it as engaging in an activity that involves some type of uncertainty. So I not only define it, but also tell you what you should be able to do in order to mitigate it and to reduce it. So one of the things that I suggest that a person do is, one, just don't act like, I believe one of the principles that I have in there, I talk about realize that you're going to burn up. Your principle is going to burn up. I forget how it says it in that question, that the principle is going to be burnt up.
Right.
Most people are saying, oh, I'm afraid of losing my money, so as a result of being afraid of losing their money, they don't want to risk. But the reality is when you invest, whether it's in a stock, bond, or a mutual fund, your principle is going to be burnt up like smoke. And your principal is actually going to be converted to whatever it is that you invested in, whether it's real estate, whether it's a franchise or something like that. So that's just the reality. The question is, what are you getting back in exchange for it? So that's where the risk comes in. Okay,
now, there are terms that people hear often, risk averse or not risk averse. What do those terms mean, and how should people look at those in their life?
Sure. When they talk about that terminology, in terms of being risk averse, they're really talking about a person's nature. Some people are conservative in nature, some people are more aggressive in nature, and one of the things that I actually talk about in the book and explain is that how you typically behave is not really what's most important when it comes to taking risk.
Okay. What's
most important is that you do what's necessary in order to accomplish your goal. So say, for instance, if a person is normally very conservative, meaning you're going to take the most risk-averse investment or do the thing that is the safest. You want a sure bet. You believe that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Right.
That may be your normal personality, but if you need a greater return on investment than what you're currently being offered, what I tell people is that you've got to be willing to take some additional risk. Because there's no way to get around it. If you don't take the additional risk, what you're essentially saying and ensuring is that you're going to fail, that you won't be able to accomplish your goals. Because, say, for instance, there are a number of people that are risk averse that often put their money into CDs. Well, bank CDs are yielding about 1% to 2% right now. So that's not keeping up with cost of inflation. So that means you're actually losing purchasing power every single month that you keep your money tied up in that CD. So if you multiply that out over 10 years or 20 years, your principal will have been eroded, your money will be gone, and then all of a sudden you'll be broke.
Okay. Now, I know at some point in your life it's really good to take some risk, and then some point in your life you probably should be more conservative. At what point should you really start to become conservative?
Well, I believe that, and I talk about that in terms of what I call the law of concentration. and it's really talking about the subject of diversification.
Okay.
And I use that, I use an analogy in the book using the natural laws of momentum to explain what people should be doing with their money. And what I actually say is, I ask the question, what will move faster if three objects weighed the same? If a square, a ball, or a triangle were right beside each other and moved down the hill, what would get down the hill first? The square, ball, or the triangle? The ball. Everybody knows that. The ball, and that's because it's got a concentrated mass. This mass is concentrated near the X and Y axis. That's a physical principle of momentum. And what that principle tells us is who should diversify and who shouldn't diversify.
Okay.
So if you have, say for instance, if you're in a position where you're earning $1 million a year, and you're quite comfortable with $1 million a year, and you're just happy with where you're at, God has blessed you, and you realize at this point that you can't afford, you don't want to lose that money, that's when you should diversify. But if you're just starting off in life and you want to get to the point where you have $1 million of income, you shouldn't diversify at that point. You should actually concentrate. And I believe one of the biggest mistakes that people actually make today is they diversify too soon.
Okay.
And in fact, when you listen to a number of people today, in fact, Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and I talked about it in the book, they had a debate between him and John Vogel. And John Vogel was saying that diversification, diversification, diversification. He told everybody you should diversify, whereas Mark Cuban said diversification is for idiots. So,
right, and the financial world is generally split upon what people should do one way or the other.
Right.
But let's digress a little bit. Let's say you've got some debt, okay, and you've got some income, and it's good income, and that you've been at it for a while, and it's decent income, and you don't spend every dime you have in debt.
Right.
How important is it? How important is that a debt, and how should you look at debt?
Sure.
Good debt, bad debt.
I believe all debt is bad. And we, prior to the real estate crisis, people used to often say when they advised people to use OPM, other people's money, that there was a such thing as good debt and bad debt. And good debt is debt that helped you make money, and bad debt was consumer debt, things that you just use to spend on groceries and things that didn't necessarily generate some type of income. And what I essentially explained, that all debt is bad because you never know how an investment is going to pan out. And if the investment turns sour, the only thing you may be left with is a bunch of debt. So from that perspective, the advice that I give people is that out of debt, out of danger. I believe that all debt is bad, and although there are times that, say for instance, if you're going to buy a house, even in this market where prices of real estate have substantially dropped, people often don't have $100,000 sitting in the bank to pay for a house.
Right.
Many don't have $20,000 to pay for a house. And if you, at that point, realize that you're going to be paying rent versus having the possibility of owning a house, in that instance, I would advise go out and get some type of loan, a low interest rate loan, and pay it off in an accelerated fashion before you take on any additional risk.
Okay.
Because when you take that risk and you get that loan, it's under the assumption that you would have the ability to repay it.
That's right.
That's an assumption. That's a risk that you take. You may not have the ability to pay. It may be just $20,000. There are condos and co-ops that are selling for $10,000 and $20,000 all night and day in the Chicagoland area. But we can't assume that you'll be able to pay that. Who knows what may happen? So that's why I advise if you get some debt, pay it off in an accelerated fashion.
Now, okay, so we got debt. I got to figure out how to pay it off. How do I reevaluate the income that I have coming in order to help me achieve the goal of paying off the debt?
Sure, right. One of the things that I often advocate through my business, as you mentioned, I'm a CPA, and one of the things that I like to do is tell people to take a personal inventory.
Okay.
You should add up all of your assets, all of your liabilities. Look at all of your sources of income. Look at all of your expenditures as far as cash flow on a monthly basis, and what that provides is, to me, what I call a financial inventory. And once you take that inventory, and then you use that in relation to your goals, it'll tell you what you need to do. Because, like, say, for instance, people often are told to get financial plans and get a financial plan, and everybody wants a financial plan, or to budget is the better example. People are always told to budget, And budgeting is like pulling teeth. I mean, I work with business people for the most part, and that's one of the things that most of them hate to do. But a budget is no good without having a plan attached to it. So say, for instance, the United States. Every single year, the United States government has to pass a balanced budget, has to pass a budget. And if it does not pass a budget, operations have to cease. Well, although the United States, just like the state of Illinois and state of California, have budgets, what's happening to their, what direction are they moving in? We're getting further and further in debt. And that's because the budget is not tied to an overall goal as to what direction you want to move in. So yes, we got to have budgets, and I think that's a very prudent thing, but it's also just as prudent to tie that budget to where you want to go in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years from today, and then reassess those goals, because in 6 months, when you initially did the budget, you may not have had a child.
Right.
It could just be totally out of the blue. You could have thought, hey, my wife is on menopause. And we're clear. We're not expecting any babies. And all of a sudden, here comes baby number 5.
Right.
And that goes your budget. There goes your retirement. You have to reevaluate. So we have to be flexible with money, but also stick to make the adjustments that are necessary so that we can get from one point to the next.
You know, I like the idea that you mentioned of not only doing a financial inventory, because the financial inventory is absolutely necessary, but of also listing your goals.
That's right.
That is the one thing that will help you stick to the plan, because you know where you're going, or at least where you're headed, and you can then come up with some kind of timeline as to how and when you can get there. Because I remember when I was getting out of debt, man, without a plan, you begin to feel like all I'm doing is paying, working to pay bills, and that can become very discouraging. But when I started looking at it, like you said, as what I wanted to accomplish, all of a sudden it became very fun.
That's right, and that's why we often say in the financial service community, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. So
now, in your book you talk about there's more than one risk in town.
That's right.
What do you mean by that? Right.
And I'm glad you really asked that, because we live in a society that is divided between the haves and the have-nots, the accredited versus the non-accredited. And most people that are not millionaires, they're classified as accredited by the Securities and Exchange Commission, non-accredited by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And as a result of that subtle legislation, what's marketed to them are primarily what you call retail investments, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So when you talk to somebody that is a retail investor that is not necessarily plugged into non-accredited non-accredited investors, the only language and investment that they're really familiar with are stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and they're wondering why they are so concerned about the volatility that's in the stock market, the up and down swings of the stock market. And that's because they are so focused on retail investments. Well, I'm here to tell you that not only are there retail investments, there are also investment vehicles, and I call them Mr. ASP in my books, and it talks about an investment vehicle versus a retail investment. One is one would get you from point A to point B, and another is what the Goldman Sachs of the world is selling you that are not necessarily profitable investments.
Okay, we're going to have to...
But they've been marked up to retail prices.
Talk about those other investments, because that would be really cool to do. We've got a caller on the line. Hi, Rick. How are you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Wonderful.
I really like the show and what you guys are talking about with money. So let's dive right in real quick. Let's say hypothetically I'm a business owner and I got a refund back on my check, on my income tax. What are some things and how I can invest my money to, as you guys would say, to protect it or to make it grow?
Okay. Right.
Okay, he's got a sudden windfall, income tax refund, like most of you guys have at home, and you think that that's a good thing. Eric can explain why sometimes that's not really a good thing.
Right.
So this is another person that let the government use their money for free.
That's right.
For a year.
That's right. Right.
So now that they've done that and they've gotten their refund without interest, what should they do with it? What's the best use of that?
Prior to spending any money, go back to what we mentioned earlier. You need to take in financial inventory. Okay. Figure out where you're at. And prior to investing that money and taking a risk to put your money into an investment, it may be a wiser choice to pay off some debt. particularly if you have something outside of mortgage debt, some credit cards, student loans, and things that have just been lingering around that are eating up your cash flow on a periodic basis. You should pay off those debts in accelerated fashion prior to taking some additional risk. But after you paid off your debts, or you have a reasonable plan to pay off your debts in an accelerated fashion, some of the things that you should do is start looking at some non-retail investments, such as, for instance, real estate. Real estate is a great investment right now, and one of the challenges that most people have is being able to obtain financing to purchase real estate. But if your refund is large enough and you're handy enough, you can go to Home Depot, Menards, and some of these home improvement places and buy you one of these houses that need construction for $5,000. And use the refund check to do that versus buying an automobile. So that's one of the options that I would recommend. Another thing that people are doing that I don't necessarily agree with, but is providing an 18% cash return on investment, is tax certificate sales. So,
okay.
Right, so you can get that, and that's a statutory rate. So there are a number of sound businesses out here, or real estate that has high tax rates that aren't paying their taxes on time, and as a result, those taxes are being sold by the respective governments, and you could buy that and eventually own the property if they don't repay it. So that's one way, and I just mentioned two things, and those are both associated with real estate, but also there are a number of things that you can do, but those are just two things that I would recommend, or three things. Paying off your debt first, looking at real estate, and then also looking at some type of tax certificate sale. Those are three things that are providing high rates of return on investment right now.
But don't forget to do your financial plan, and then put your plans and of your goals also side by side first.
Exactly. So that was four things.
That's right. We've got Joseph on the phone. Hi, Joseph. How are you doing?
Hi. I heard you guys talk about real estate. Is this an actual good time to really invest in real estate?
Is this an actual good time to invest in real estate?
I'm going to tell you.
I was just wondering, with refund checks and things of that nature,
sure,
and the way the economy is this a good time for real estate investment?
Yeah, I'm going to say absolutely yes. This is the best time. The Bible talks about the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just. And I believe this is an ideal time to get rich. Although real estate prices are declining still across the country, and apparently they're still declining in Cook County and throughout Illinois and a number of metropolitan areas. It is still, regardless as to the price that these properties may ultimately sell for, when you start looking at the rental values of a lot of these parcels of land, this is a great time to invest, because people are often one-sided. They've been thinking about, well, I don't want to buy real estate because the prices are continually declining. But one thing that is not declining as rapidly is the rents that people are paying in order to occupy these places. Right. So that's what I would look at and base my decision off of that. So yes, now is a great time to invest in real estate.
Now, in here, there's a question, and this is a question that I thought was really uncanny, because a lot of people are not honest when they ask this question or look for answers, and that is, what keeps you awake at night?
Oh, wow. That is a great question, because I talk to a number of people that are young, middle-aged, and older. And one thing that constantly keeps a number of these people awake, their retail investors, is volatility. They can't sleep at night because they don't know if their money is safe. They don't know if they're going to wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden their brokerage has collapsed, or all of a sudden their portfolio went from being $250,000 down to zero. Or
your house was worth $250,000. You
right.
went to sleep, it was worth $25,000.
And now you're upside down. So that is absolutely right. That is keeping people awake at night. And the solution to that is learning how to value investments, manage risk properly, and then playing a role with your money. Until we start doing those three things, people are constantly going to be apprehensive about investing. So, but volatility is the number one thing that keeps investors awake at night, because they don't know if their money is safe.
Okay, we'll have to come back to how do you value your investments, but we've got a caller on the line. Hi, Helen, how are you?
Hi, how are you all doing today?
Fine.
My question to Mr. January is, what's the best place to save my money? I mean, I'm getting closer towards my retirement time, and I really don't know which direction to go in.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea of
Sure.
how to save or how to invest properly for my future.
Sure. Right. Stephanie, thank you so much. Or Helen, how can I forget that name? That was my grandmother's name.
Hello?
And Helen is a great name. So, but I like the question because people are often told to save their money. And when you save your money, you're thinking about accumulating a certain dollar figure.
Right.
You want to have $100,000, $200,000, or $1 million, or $2 million in order to make yourself comfortable. One of the things that I recommend in the second book that I wrote is not to save for retirement. Now, I know that sounds like...
So what do you do for retirement?
Right, because if a person saved $100,000 and or say $1 million, and what if you live to be 100, and your expenses all of a sudden you outlived your money?
Right.
And that happens all the time. So versus saving for retirement, what I advocate is for a person to think economic and not financial, and think about maximizing your passive income so that you have some passive income coming in the entirety of your life. Whether you live to be 120, you will still have money coming in. So versus saving and having something that you have to spend down, which is what retail investors do, I recommend that a person actually invest. Get a passive income, build that passive income up, get 5,000, 10,000, figure out what your numbers are, and get, once you reach that goal, say for instance, we have a job and we know that our job is bringing in, whether it's $5,000 or $100,000 a month, we base our budget based on that. And we live accordingly. Likewise, when you're in retirement, if you have a certain sum of income coming in on a monthly basis, you can budget off of that, so that if things do occur, which they will occur, you'll know how to make the adjustments. And you'll have something to make adjustments with, and you won't have to worry about running out of money during retirement.
So how do I then secure passive investment and passive income? So like the caller said, she's got some money, so how does she secure passive income?
Sure, right. And I call that the secret to making money while you sleep. And the number one thing, or there are two things that are related to that. One, you have to learn how to value investments. Most people haven't been taught how to value investments. People have been taught to buy stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, but not how do you value investments. People have been taught to buy houses for themselves, but they haven't been taught how to value the investments properly. So as a result, we have people that are upside down in their mortgages, and other people, as you mentioned earlier, that are apprehensive about the safety of their money. That's the thing that's keeping them awake at night. So in order to resolve that, one, you got to learn how to value an investment, and that way you'll start getting some passive income coming in.
So give me an example of valuing my investment.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. An example of that. If for a person, say for instance, that is a multi-billionaire.
Okay.
And they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's make it real practical. The Waltons. They have, I believe, the last time I calculated, over $100 million that comes in from the Walmart stock dividend alone. So they get this collectively as a family, and that for that reason they own over 50% of the Walmart stock, because they don't have to sell the investment because they're getting so much money coming in from the investments.
Okay.
Well, to the Waltons, based on the dividend that they're getting from Walmart Corporation, the stock may be worth $50 a share. But for someone that doesn't have $1 billion to invest, but maybe $250,000, that same share of stock may be only worth $2.
Okay.
So you adjust how you pay, adjust what you pay for the cash flow. That's essentially how you value investments. There's an exact formula for that, and there's more that goes into it because you have to analyze the business, and there are a number of things that you have to do in order to determine the actual value. But in a nutshell, you have to base your decision off of the cash flow and a couple other factors. I don't want to give all the goodies away.
Okay, now, let's say I got $200, $300, right? But I have that every month. Because I get this a question a lot when I'm out on the speaking tour. They have $200 a month. What's the best place for that?
The best place for it?
Yeah, minimal debt.
Sure. Minimal debt. I mean, again, we have to go back to answering your question about what are your goals? What do you want to be? in 6 months? Where do you want to be in 10 years? In order to answer that question, we have to figure out where you want to be. And then once we know where you want to be in a certain amount of time, it's like in order for me to make it to the studio today, I lived, say if I lived 100 miles away from the studio and I only had a half an hour to get here, how fast would I have to drive? I'd probably have to catch a plane. I have to drive so fast in order to make it 100 miles in less than 30 minutes. A car
so you
can't
really
drive.
have to know where you want to be.
So you really have to, I mean, it is so important that you know where you need to be, because you can end up going grocery shopping. It's like going grocery shopping and going grocery shopping and not having a plan about what meal you're going to make. So you can end up going grocery shopping and buying a lot of things that you already have, and buying a lot of the things, missing a number of things that you need in order to make a meal. So that plan is so important. That cannot be underscored. You really have to have your plan and goals in mind before you spend a dime.
Okay. We've got another caller. Hi, Lester. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Enjoying the show, and really enjoying the show. Very informative. But I need some practical advice. All right. Debts are high. Income is low. Where do I start at? How do I get out of this miry putt?
Right. Yeah. And I believe you probably answered the question yourself, because if your debts are high and your income are low, one of the things that I'd advocate, maybe consider filing a Chapter 7. Talk to an attorney, see if you can declare a jubilee yourself and get rid of some of those debts. Or contact your creditor. There's nothing wrong with settling your debts for less than what you owe. So if you're behind in your payment and you're struggling to make your payments, I understand that if you incurred a debt, that there's often this stigma about not paying your debts on time, which it should be. I mean, if you sign on a dotted line for something, you should be a man or woman of your word. But if circumstances have changed and things are out of, beyond your control, renegotiate. Donald Trump did it.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. The volatility got him. He renegotiated.
Right. That's right. The Trump Tower was the largest skyscraper built in the United States since the Sears Tower or something like that. He had to renegotiate that debt. So don't be ashamed of renegotiating your debt. But then, even before you renegotiate your debt, you have to do something. You got to come up with a game plan to increase your income. So maybe you're in some type of occupation that's dying, maybe some occupation that's been outsourced. You need to maybe reinvent yourself and figure out how, God, you've given me these talents, and there's some things that I've always wanted to do that maybe I've been putting off. Well, now is the time to do it. Whether you have to start part-time or go into it full-time, you have to do something. Because at the end of the day, even if you renegotiated your debts for 10% of the amount owed, if you don't have the income to pay for it, it would be unwise for you to do that, because you do need to eat. So that's what I would recommend. Focus on your active income, and then also once you've got settled there, start thinking about some passive income, so that one day you will not have to work because you have some money flowing in to satisfy your needs. Hopefully that helped you.
Thank you. In your book, you talk about one risk covers all possible risk. Yeah.
Now this is my favorite. I'm saying it on the air. I was a mama's boy. And my books are based on the laws of momentum. And one of the risks that I talk about in the book is, I call it the mother of all risk, and it's momentum risk. Momentum risk, once you really get into the depths of what it explains every type of risk that you can imagine. It explains volatility, which is a form of risk. It explains price risk. It explains inflation risk, political risk. All of it, the interest rate risk, all of those risks are covered by that one risk. If you understand the mother of all risk, which is momentum risk, as I discussed in my book, you'll be able to make any prudent decision on how to manage your money. And I mention that because oftentimes before people get into investing, particularly retail investors, they get inundated or concerned about all of the complexity of the terminology. They can't recite all of the risk like a PhD can from Harvard University. So what I say is, versus trying to memorize all of these risks, which is very difficult and only a few people can do it, focus on learning this one risk. And once you understand how to manage this one risk, which is the momentum risk, the mother of all risk, which is an undesired change in your position, you can get ahead. You can make some prudent decisions.
Okay, we're going to talk about how to manage the undesired change in your position after we take this call. Hi, Lester's calling back with another question. Hi, how are you?
I just want to know how important is tithing in this whole financial stability situation. Can you speak on that?
Sure. And as a minister, and I know Stephanie's going to chime in on this as well, because she certainly has her opinion on tithing and the importance of being charitable. And I believe that is the essence of tithes. And I think that paying tithes is very important. But I do also believe that the importance of tithes from a standpoint of getting rich has been exaggerated. And I'll say that in the sense that people have been taught if you pay your tithes in the prosperity gospel, that you'll get rich. And what I basically explain is the purpose of tithes is so that there is no poor and needy among us, according to the Bible. And as a result of there not being any poor and needy among us in society, guess what? The government won't have to take money out of our pockets in order to take care of the poor and needy. So we won't be walking around feeling like we got holes in our pocket. So I believe it's very important that we pay tithes so that people can be taken care of, but that's only under the condition that the churches and charitable organizations that we're giving to are actually using it for a charitable purpose and not just to promote themselves or their ministry. I believe it's very important that churches become more charitable and that charitable organizations, when they complete their 990, that the majority of those proceeds are going to the benefit of the constituents and not just the executive directors of the organization. So tithes is very important. So hopefully I answered your question. Now, Stephanie, go ahead.
I try not to talk about this every show, right? But I believe tithing is very important. I believe tithing is essential, and I believe that one can tithe themselves to wealth. However, it's not a magical formula as people think. You don't just give the tithe and then money just comes rolling in. There are a lot of other conditions around the tithe. It's got to be cheerful. You've got to tithe where you're spiritually fed. You've got to make sure that you're tithing first before you're charitable, then you can be charitable. Also, you can't have any conditions on what should happen to that money. You turn it over to where you're spiritually fed, and you let it go. And what I believe the tithe actually does for you is it opens your mind so that you are now able to receive ideas about what to do next. And then you follow those ideas, you follow up. You'll find that once you begin to tithe, at least I found once I began to tithe, then all of a sudden I would meet people and be in situations and circumstances to where I could have conversations like this or be introduced to books. So I almost think it's the magical thing that actually will help you finally sit down, do a financial inventory, because when you get ready to give 10%, you've got to do a financial inventory. And then it also forces you to sit down and come up with a plan for your life. So it's magical in the sense that it's a way to get you to do some of the things that you don't want to do to begin with.
That's right.
People don't want to budget. People don't want to decide where they want to be. But once you start to tithe, you've got to budget and you've got to decide where you're going to be. And you'll find that things just start to come your way. And things come your way because you've made some decisions about where you want to be. Because I believe that first you have to decide. And once you decide, and you set your intention. And your attention is a way of telling the universe where you want to go. And then all of a sudden, the universe or spirit in the universe will open some doors that you couldn't open by yourself because you didn't have any intention about achieving anything.
Right.
Let's talk about finding your position, undesirable changes in your position. And that happens to everyone in every investment. I don't know that there's any investment that you could make that's going to go exactly the way you anticipate. So how do you manage that?
Sure. And that's the key. And that's about the whole principle of risk management. People often think when it comes to risk management that only insurers do that, only financial advisors do that, but we manage risk every single day. When we're just managing employees, when we're trying to get the maximal benefit out of the least possible resources. So we get the least, but we're trying to get the max. Well, that's the essential essence of managing risk.
Okay.
We're trying to take the least amount of risk and getting the maximal reward. And I go through the process of how do you do that. There are basically a couple of things that you do in order to manage risk. Conventionally, people are taught that there are 3 things to do. I explain that there are only 2 things to do. I'm not going to give it all away, but there are 2 things that you do. Right. In terms of managing risk. But the essence is you're taking the least amount of risk and you're trying to get the maximal benefit from it. That's managing risk.
And we do want to emphasize that this is very good information and very good tips. However, everything is dependent upon your personal inventory and where you want to go.
That's right.
There is not a one-stop shop. It's not a one solution fits every situation. So you do have to take that time. We've got another caller. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, this is Kelly. My child is getting ready to go to college, and I have myself and still paying on student loans. Am I being a bad parent by encouraging her to go to a junior college for the first 2 years because she doesn't have a scholarship, and then transferring to a university after the fact?
It sounds like you have some wisdom.
To encourage her to do so?
Sounds like you got a good plan to me.
That's right.
At the cost of, and we'll let the expert answer, but at the cost of education, and if they don't have a scholarship, I think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting out with a community college or a junior college, and that way they can get a taste for it to see what they like, make some decisions along the way, like what do they want to be when they grow up, take the basic classes, make good grades, transfer into a 4-year university or college after that point where they may have a scholarship because they've had time to demonstrate their ability in their grades from that point forward.
Sure, right.
I also think, though, that the kids should work while they're in college, part-time. A lot of parents think that, oh, they shouldn't work, they should get used to school, but no point in life is someone going to say, oh, let me take that extra assignment off your plate. While you're raising your family, don't worry about that, I'll pay your bills for you. That just doesn't happen in life. So I think that they should do all of it. They should contribute to their education and to their room and board.
Right, right. I wholeheartedly agree with what Stephanie just said. I do believe, or what you essentially said to me is that you're managing risk. Because there's a certain risk in going to college these days. There's no guarantee that after you graduate with a 4-year bachelor's degree or a master's degree that you'll be able to get a job.
That's right.
And there are people that are coming out of school with $200,000 of debt and getting jobs making $20,000, $25,000 a year. And it's going to take them forever to pay off the student loan debt that they've incurred. So I wholeheartedly advocate what you recommended. It sounds like that you learned some powerful lessons and that you are guiding your child in the proper direction so that they can be in a better position in order to get ahead. So I wholeheartedly agree. I would recommend that myself. And in fact, I've told my children if they don't get athletic or academic scholarships, they're going to a junior college for the first 2 years.
For the first 2 years.
Right.
I don't think anything is wrong with it. You have to learn new habits when you're in college because it is a much different experience from high school. And sometimes those lessons are better or easily learned in a junior college. And as you said, with today's risk, I would say 2 years community college or junior college and then into the 4-year college. And I would actually say do it local so you don't have to be taxed with out-of-state fees.
Sure. One of the things I also recognize, having gone to a school out of state and having lived in different parts of the country, not all junior colleges are created equally,
right.
though.
That's true.
Because when I lived in Dallas, Texas, and the North Dallas area, the community colleges that they have there are better than some of the universities that we have in Chicago.
And same thing when I lived in Florida, the junior college was better than some of the colleges we have here. So you do have to pick them, and then you need to pick them according to what their interests are,
That's
too,
right.
because it is a risk. In here you say not all laziness is bad.
That's right. That's right.
Let's talk about that.
That's right. we live in a society that basically emphasizes the importance of work, although we have some things that are encouraging people not to work. But typically, if a person has a choice between doing the most difficult thing or the easiest thing, most people are going to take the path of least resistance. And when I say that all laziness is not bad, I'm referencing a physical law that is described as the path of least resistance. And if you look at nature, that's how nature is. In order to conserve energy, in order to get from one point to the next, it doesn't take the most difficult path for water to flow downhill. It's going to find the easiest path in order to get downhill, and it would often create a path in order to get downhill because water is not going to flow uphill. It will be too difficult. I mean, it would end up being a barrier. So it finds the easiest way to get downhill. And what I'm essentially saying is, when it comes to managing risk, not all laziness is bad. So versus taking the most risky investment, you should be willing to take the least risky investment and get the maximum return on investment. That's basically explaining that all laziness is not bad.
Now, and here you say, don't get trumped by time.
That's right.
Okay.
And you know, I'm referencing the Donald on that. And what I'm explaining in that instance is when people put their money to work, when you have an earnings process, whether that earnings process is 6 months or whether it's a year or 2 months, the shorter that earning process is, in order for you to earn money on an investment, the less risky that investment is going to be. And the longer it is, the more risk that you're going to be exposed to. And essentially, that's what it is in a nutshell. I believe that if people, I have clients that had invested in real estate, that had they invested in the real estate, and even if the market was going to collapse, but if they could sell their properties in 2 days versus taking 1 year to build a whole development, they could have been in a better position, because if the market had collapsed, they would have been able to sell out of it before the market collapsed. So the shorter your time period is, you don't want to get trumped by time, in other words. You want to make sure that you take the least amount of risk that you can relative to the return that you're getting. You don't want to get investments that have a prolonged period of time that it's going to take you 10 years in order to break even, or 30 years to break even, as it is with a lot of retail investments. The shorter the time period, the less risk you're taking. So don't get trumped by time.
Okay, in here you talk about weight and shape both matter. Now, I know we talked about the ball and the rectangle. So how does that affect us in investments?
That's right. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, when you talk about weight and shape, when you look at objects and they're moving in order to gain momentum, momentum is a factor of weight and it's a factor of speed. When if something weighs 100 pounds and it's traveling at 100 miles an hour, it's going to have a certain amount of force, whereas something that just weighs 50 pounds that's traveling 100 miles an hour is not going to have the same amount of force. So weight and shape matter in terms of momentum. And when we're talking about weight in this regard, we're talking about the amount of money that you actually have to put to work. The more money you have, the more difficult it is often in order to get a higher return on investment. A person that has $1,000 could probably easily get 1,000% return on investment in time, whereas somebody that has $1 billion trying to find investments is going to be more difficult for them to put that money to work. So weight and shape matter in terms of momentum. Just as it does physically, same principle applies economically.
Okay, so as you know, we meet more and more people who have some income coming in, as I said earlier, and not a lot of debt. You know, just day-to-day kind of debt. Maybe a small house note or a car note, and they've got some money that they can invest. So they should really, really, really look at the length of time their investments would take to get what they would like to get from that, and not a long time.
That's right.
And then then look at how society has changed around you. As you say in your book, you wouldn't want to install payphones right now because we're using cell phone.
That's
and
right.
Maybe it's not a good time to start a company where you're doing landline phones, because we're all doing cellular.
That's right.
Or some kind of Android or iPhone technology.
That's right.
So you really need to not only know what you need or where you want to go, you've got to take a good, hard look at discovering or finding out where are we moving as a society. You know, what trends are going to come to an end.
That's right.
And what trends are new now.
That's right.
Because that's important in investing.
It's extremely important that you understand how trends operate and how they will affect the investments that you have and the investments that you're considering. Otherwise, you can end up making a lot of money or end up losing a lot of money. Trend analysis is very important. Excuse me, and I'll talk about that in the second book quite a bit.
Now, and here you say it's automatic for some and not for others.
Right. And what I'm referencing is the diversification.
Okay.
And explaining that people that diversify, when you're talking about a person that is in the, say for instance, if you have a policy of not incurring a lot of debt, and you want to invest and you put your money to work. So you buy a small investment at a time. Maybe you're spending $5,000 here, $5,000 there. But when you're buying it, maybe it could be property that you're buying for $5,000 in increments. It could be a trailer home. You moved down to Texas and you heard about the hurricane tornado recently. There were trailer homes that were blown away. A lot of people rent trailer homes. I had a college roommate. His life dream goal was to have a trailer home. And once he got the trailer home, he realized I need to set some more goals because he got it pretty early. So, but my point is that when a person, if you have that type of attitude where you don't want to have a lot of debt, diversification is going to be more automatic for you, because as a result of having to put your money into a number of investments, because you can only put so much in one investment, so you have to spread it out as a result of there only being so many. Whereas for other people that may be buying stocks, bonds, or mutual funds, where shares are sold in the billions, you could easily put all of your eggs in one basket and as a result not be diversified. And whether you should be diversified or not, that goes back to the question of figuring out where you're at in life. Are you satisfied with where you're at? And if you are, you should diversify. But if you're not where you want to be, diversification is not the solution for you. And diversification is also, what I explained in the book, not the panacea for illogic. People often think that diversification is going to get rid of investment volatility. It won't. There are mutual funds that lost just as much as stocks did in 2008, 2009, and 2010. So, and if they're diversified, technically that shouldn't have happened. Well, they didn't, because diversification is not the panacea to not value an investment properly.
And you also mentioned, don't act like an amateur.
Right, right. And one of the things that I've learned being a CPA and dealing with a number of people, once people figure out that there is a way to make some money in a particular industry, you have a lot of people that are all of a sudden copycats.
Right.
Like, oh, I want to do this, me too, me too. Oh, he's making a lot of money in this. And all of a sudden they get in the business, and so many people flood the business that all of a sudden they're bidding down the price at such a point where you can't even make any money. It's just impossible for the professionals to make money because
I think that's what happened to the real estate market.
That's right.
There was a time when you could make a lot of money, and then everybody jumped in, and all of a sudden the markets flooded, and there was a market correction.
Exactly. So, and that's essentially what I'm saying. Don't act like an amateur. If you're going to get in business, you have to understand that business. You have to understand that industry. You have to understand your cash flow. You have to understand how many deals you have to do in order to turn a profit. And when you start ignoring those numbers, you're starting to act like an amateur. And it's just a matter of time before you lose a lot of your money. So don't act like an amateur.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who like to do a lot of things. They jump around, even in their personal life. Let's say in my personal life, I have goals. I've decided where it is I want to go. And then they're intoxicated by what someone else is doing. So then all of a sudden, you're deviating from your plan. And one of the reasons may be that the reason you're not successful is because you're away from your plan. You're away from what feels good to you. You're away from what you decided and where you decided you wanted to go.
That's right.
And you have to go where you want to go and not where you think someone else is going. Because it always looks great on the other side, but they have the same kinds of issues. And I notice people do that in businesses a lot.
That's right.
They'll say, oh, they're making money over here, and that's so contrary to what you do every day, and you forget that there's a learning curve for being successful in there.
That's right. And you never really get a chance to develop any momentum.
Right.
In your business or in your career or in your personal life when you're going from one thing to the next. And that's why the Bible also talks about a man with a wavering mind can't expect nothing from God. It's not that God won't give it to you, but the moment that he's about to give it to you, you change your mind and you're doing something else. So now he was about to give it to you while you were being a carpenter, but all of a sudden, no, I think I want to be an electrician.
Right.
So he's like, okay, I got to figure out how to get it to him over here.
Over here.
And by the time he's about to get it to you as an electrician, you say, no, I don't even want to be in the trades at all.
I want to
do something
right.
else.
I want to do music. Right.
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 So at the end of the day, you have nothing.
That's right. Now, we've talked about the personal goals, and I want everyone at home to commit to doing a personal inventory and doing your personal goals, because that is incredibly important.
That's right.
Now, as we talk about risk and debt, what debt should people try to eliminate right now? If you have debt, what should be the first goal? What should be your first goal?
Credit card debt
Okay.
is just a no-brainer. The interest rates that they're charging on credit, banks are borrowing money from the Federal Reserve and the Treasury at extremely low rates, but charging you 26% interest. That 26% interest means you're going to end up paying over 4 times the amount of what you've borrowed from the bank.
Yeah, because what's the rate now? Is it?
Well, it's variable.
2 or 3%?
Yeah.
That's the banks.
Yeah, CD rates.
The CD. And then, so the banks aren't paying much for the money, but you're right. They
charge you a ton
24,
of money.
25%.
That's right.
And they're getting rich, and then they don't want to lend it to you after they charge you that.
Right. So that is the first debt that I would pay off.
Okay.
The second debt would be installment debts. And installment debts, like, say, for instance, your car note. If you have a car note and you're paying $250 a month, $300, depending on whatever it is you're paying, start making some accelerated payments. And I also recommend using a method to pay off your debts. What we often talk about is called the snowball method. So you pay off the smallest debt with the highest interest rate first.
Okay.
And then after you paid that debt off, and you put all of your money towards the smallest debt with the highest interest rate first. Now that debt is paid off, and then you tackle the next one. And you
okay, so that money that you were sending to that's now paid off.
Yes.
You're taking all that money, and now you're putting any extra money and putting it in there.
And putting it in there.
Okay.
And before you know it, it starts a snowball effect. And before you know it, you will, first of all, you're going to start realizing and experiencing a sense of accomplishment, because you're saying, hey, I just paid off American Express. Hey, I just paid off Citibank. And it encourages you to keep moving, because there's a sense of momentum that you're gaining. So that's what you want to do. It's almost like rewarding yourself for doing the right thing. And before you know it, you'll be completely out of debt.
Now, what about IRAs and things like that? Is that a good place for young people to start to do something to put money aside?
Sure.
Because that way they can run and get it every week or
Right.
whatever they do.
Right. Now, IRAs, they are good in a certain sense that they protect you legally. In the event that somebody tried to sue you, it's hard to get money out of retirement accounts.
Okay.
So,
okay.
But from a standpoint, one of the things that I've often noticed, particularly with retail investments, people put a retail investment in a IRA, and then some emergency comes up because they don't have any adequate savings, and they have to dip into the IRA, and then the IRS is going to hit you over the head because you took that money.
Right, you don't dip into the IRA.
That's right.
That's right. You do not dip into it.
Right, so that means you've got to have some money already set aside before you put money in an IRA, because if you have an emergency and have to take it out, the government is going to penalize you.
Great point.
So you don't want that to happen. But also because of the fact that if you own a stock and you bought IBM, and IBM is only yielding a 2% return on investment, the only thing that you're going to get taxed on if you don't put it in the IRA is the dividend. You don't have to worry about anything else. Now, if you sold the investment, then you would have a capital gain, and it could be a capital gain or a capital loss. And if it's a capital loss, you can write off about $3,000 a year, so it may be to your benefit. So I always advise people to be very careful about what you put in the IRA. There are some tax advantages that are very real as far as not having to pay any taxes on investments that are in the IRA. But also there are some very real negatives if you had to access that money before you were 59 and a half or you started annuitizing that IRA. So I just tell people to be very cautious. And then there are also other types of IRAs that people need to be aware of. There are the retail IRAs, and then you have the self-directed IRAs. I prefer self-directed IRAs.
Okay. Now, on the cash that you should have set aside for emergency money, what's a good figure for that? You hear in the market anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to 9 months to a year.
Sure.
I often subscribe to the year school of thought just because of that unchanged, your unchanged position.
Sure.
That wasn't as prevalent 20 years ago as it is now.
Right. And what I use to determine what's an appropriate amount is the nature of a person's income.
Okay.
If you're in a business and it's extremely volatile, you're going to want to have as much cash as you possibly can because you don't know when your next paycheck may be coming. But if you have a steady paycheck, a career that has got some momentum and you can get a job, I'll recommend the minimum of 3 months. But then if you're just a little uncomfortable, maybe I would go to 6 months. And in your case, when you said a year, you're really talking about a business that is extremely volatile. And if the business is that volatile, maybe you need to consider something else.
Okay.
So you really have to look at where you're at and the source of your income to determine how much you need to save.
Now, we're coming to the end of our time, but what 1 or 2 things would you like to leave with the audience?
What 1 or 2 things would I like to leave with the audience?
So money's my favorite thing to talk about. So.
Sure, right.
Been a blast.
Right. One thing that I would really like to emphasize is prior to investing, you need to do a personal inventory. Because yes, I love to talk about money just as Stephanie does, but I cannot underscore the importance of doing a personal inventory, sitting down, writing your goals, and figure out where you want to be. Because once you know where you want to be, you're going to have to make the decisions that are necessary in order to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And those decisions will often the decisions that you have to make will force you out of your comfort zone often. You may be comfortable in your career, so that's one thing.
Okay.
Second thing is learn how to value an investment. And then, number 2, manage your risk properly.
I want to thank you for coming on tonight to talk about my favorite thing, money. And I know that our listening audience was able to get a lot of education, because it's nice to be able to just have a conversation about money. A lot of the conversations are so convoluted that we just don't understand, and we're so afraid to ask our questions. I want to thank my viewers tonight for, as always, you've had wonderful questions, and you've stretched us and me and my guests to make sure that we can answer your questions. My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman. I am the Empowerment Doctor, and this has been A Sip of Inspiration. I want to also, before we sign off, is to thank one of our sponsors. The show was partially brought to you by Brown Sugar Bakery. I want you guys to remember to dream big, live the life you have imagined, and manage your risk and your money. Until next time, life is too short to drink cheap champagne.
A bird sang this song to me. There was a message in its melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. He said, tomorrow is another day, living is the only way tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything gonna be everything is gonna be. Now the trees sang this song to me. He said the birds sang it to the breeze, just in case I was feeling down and didn't really want to be around. He said the breeze sometimes come with rain, but nothing in life stays the same. Tomorrow's gonna bring a change. The message remains the same.